Well, I'm so glad that you have taken time out of your life right now to join these 3 other amazing authors for this blog showcase.
Looking forward to it. So.
And Carl Forehand, fellow choir author, that is what is dinging is he's messaging me. Where is the live video? So someone message Carl and tell him to come to the group. And we have another viewer who's watching, 2 viewers so far. So please tell us if you're stateside, if you're in the comments, what did you have for breakfast? And if you're like Tim, you are in Europe, tell us what are you having for dinner later? So put that in the comments as we get this show on the road.
What time is it in Europe? Is it 8 hours ahead?
I was thinking 7. Let's go ahead. Actually,
so it's this afternoon.
I'm going to bring you up, Tim. I'm going to bring you up to answer that. 2, 1. Hello, welcome, Tim Higgins.
Is he still muted? Maybe. Okay.
Got it. Hey, Tim. What time is it there?
He's muted.
Okay. Thanks, Michelle. Okay, Tim, try it again. We'll listen. I'll listen really well.
I'm on now. Right. I hit it. I'm unmuted now. It's 4:08 now, I think. Yeah.
4:08. So
look into the future.
Yeah, right. And Tim, what are you having for dinner?
Oh, we're having a roast chicken, some spuds.
Delicious. My husband is also making chicken. That's wonderful. Well, for our viewers, we're gonna Tim is gonna go back and wait in the cyber green room until his time to reach. So bye, Tim. We'll see you in a little bit. All righty. So we are now ready to go. We're so glad everyone is joining us. Once again, this is you're in the Book and Blog Showcase at the Cultivating Sanctuary Facebook group. We are a group that's all about cultivating peace, patience, and productivity for spiritually attuned go-getters during these certain times. I would encourage you to check the comments of this video because amazing authors, they are. Everyone is joining us. I think someone else is watching this live. I'm going to mute everybody.
That was me. Sorry.
Oh, you're okay. You're good. The four authors that are sharing their work with you today, they are going to be putting their website links or blog links, or some of them are podcasters, so they'll probably I hope they put their podcast link below so you can stay connected with them and keep getting your life enriched by their content. Also, stay tuned after each of them gives you a sneak peek preview of their upcoming work. They're going to share one practical tip that enhanced their creativity process. So you don't want to miss that. So that means by the end of this video, you'll not only get a little VIP pass of brand new content, but you're also going to leave with 4 tips to help your own creativity process. So without further ado, it is my privilege to introduce Michelle. Michelle is reading a piece called Metamorphosis from an upcoming book with Choir Publishing Company. Michelle shares that her audience is those who are working through religious deconstruction, and she seeks to help them understand the psychology involved and to know they are not alone. So without further ado, I give the microphone to Michelle Collins. Enjoy.
Good morning. So nervous to do this, by the way. It's so very humbling to be asked to do it, but it's also so very frightening because as a content creator, you are sharing pieces of your soul almost. And of course, when you put that out there for public consumption, there's either people that are going to like it or people that don't. And, you know, my little ego starts getting all nervous. So anyway, I believe we're just going to read through this. My piece is called Metamorphosis. This is in my upcoming book. However, it is not in this block format that I'm reading it from today. It's broken up through the book, depending upon the section. As Meg stated, my audience are those that have experienced some form of what has commonly become known as deconstruction in the church, the questioning of one's beliefs, the changing of one's mind, And one of the things that I found through going through this process is that it is also very psychological. We tend to look at it, especially those of us that from a Christian perspective, we fail to realize that often everybody is deconstructing at some point, whether it's our belief system or another belief system, life in general. Each one of these, there is a very much a psychology process happening internally on a subconscious level that we may not even be aware of. So the book is geared towards what is happening in the background while you are questioning and changing your mind. And I've included a lot of very anecdotal portions of the book from my own experience. The book is often snarky and is often leaves questions, because at the end of the day, regardless of how much we want answers, sometimes they're just not there. But as I said, this portion is something that happens in nature that actually struck me as very much in line with the process that I felt like I went through. And so I wrote on this. So I'm just going to read it. If it's too long, Meg, just knock me out of here. I'm totally cool with that. Metamorphosis. Not too long ago, I was introduced to the subject of metamorphosis. As a child, we all learn about caterpillars becoming butterflies and what a fanciful transition it is. I don't remember a lot of details surrounding the process when it was discussed, just the outcome, the beautiful fairy-like butterfly with patterned wings and little feelers on its head. As most little girls, I'm sure, I remember thinking about the ability to fly and how exciting it must be to get a new body along with new ways in which to see the world. It's fanciful. It's somewhat like a fairy tale. It's only as you get older and you encounter the actual process that it becomes something deeper. It's no less fanciful and amazing, yet there is a deeper understanding that occurs at this point. So the word metamorphosis comes from the Greek and Latin. Ironically, it's associated with ideas of witchcraft and magic. It's basically a change from one shape or etymology to another. There are, as I mentioned previously, or I didn't mention it here, by the way, but in the book I did, different animals and insects that go through some sort of metamorphosis. In reality, even humans go through a similar process in utero, and even up to and including during birth. Bet you didn't know that. But let's go back to the caterpillar, because I think that there's much to learn about ourselves in this little guy's process. First and foremost, there is no identical process for the caterpillar. Each finds their own rhythm and timing, and while I may be guessing here, I don't believe they worry about it. They just live and go along with their eating and existing. At some point along the way, a hormone that they are used to secreting stops being a part of their experience and throws a new journey at the caterpillar. They have spent a large amount of time eating large amounts of food as preparation for a process that they may not even be aware of. Sidebar. I know that it was after I started reading large amounts of information and seeking answers from new sources that my process began. Seems like a correlation, but I'll leave it up to you to decide. Now it gets interesting. The caterpillar begins to form a growth inside themselves called a chrysalis, which eventually encases the caterpillar and allows for the transformation that is to come. At this point, a decomposition begins, and the caterpillar digests itself and releases certain enzymes that allow for dissolution of its body matter. It sounds pretty gross, but the process is necessary for the metamorphosis. Even while the body is breaking down, the immune system of the caterpillar is continuing to do its job for as long as it can. Inherent within the structure of the caterpillar and waiting patiently for their part of the process, something called imaginal cells survive the decomposition. They alone carry the blueprint for the new creature and begin to appear slowly in the decomposition process. The immune system continues to do its job and attack the imaginal cells as unknown, destroying them. Over time, however, the activation of the imaginal cells in comparison to the dying immune system just becomes too much. The immune system completely stops functioning, and the imaginal cells take over. The butterfly begins to take shape. So I'm going to stop here and reference a part of the deconstructive process that I have experienced. I want to draw some parallels, and hopefully you'll see the connection. As I began to question my religious beliefs and several of the long-standing tenets of Christianity, Much of what I thought I knew and believed began to cause confusion. This confusion demanded more introspection and inspection, and before I knew it, I was down several different rabbit holes that only provided more questions. I know I'm not alone here, as I've heard quite a few express the same frustration with regard to answers only leading to more questions. Let me give you an example. One of the very first tenets of my religious background that came into focus as a matter of questioning was that of eternal conscious torment. In my tradition, it was never referred to as ECT, however. It was just called hell. I grew up terrified of hell, and by extension, terrified of God. I was convinced that God saw me as an awful sinner, and without going into much detail in this book, there was a good reason. I lived my life, even as a child, constantly begging for forgiveness and hoping against hope that I would somehow make it into heaven, even if God only had to accept me because of Jesus. As I read and studied on the subject as an adult, I found myself continuing to come back to the question of how a loving God could separate those with whom he found fault and sentence them to something that seemed so out of his character. After all, I was raised to believe God was love, and this seemed far from it. I know all the arguments, and I've actually said many of them in conversations with others that question the doctrine. God does not send people to hell, they choose it. But why would anyone with all the information choose something so unthinkable instead of God? Further, why would a God who is likened to love create such a place to begin with? Is he unable to reason with people and show them his true character so that they could avoid such a conclusion? Anyway, I digress. I'm not trying to argue for or against hell here, but rather to set the stage for the comparison to the caterpillar. As I struggled with this staggering contradiction in my mind and tried to find a reason, I found myself slowly transitioning to the idea that hell is a man-made idea used to control people. So I slowly stepped away from the belief, and for a short period of time, I found a measure of peace. I found that, however, along the way, I was prone to almost a PTSD reaction that would spring up from seemingly nowhere and cause panic, and symptoms I later learned were akin to anxiety disorder. I would find myself short of breath, with my heart beating out of my chest and an overwhelming feeling of fear. I would find myself afraid of being wrong again, and I would find myself imagining hell and the consequences all over again. Even writing it here, I feel the familiar pangs of panic in my chest and the tightening in my throat, even writing it and saying it. This sequence played out over and over in the beginning of my deconstructive process. I would at strange times need to leave the house and walk and cry and breathe deeply to bring myself back to some semblance of control. After reading about the immune system of the caterpillar as it is dying and the tenacity of the imaginal cells in their ever-forward march towards transition, I began to see my situation. The old me is dying. The immune system is still trying to function in the manner in which it was trained to do. The transformed me, the burgeoning me, is struggling toward its own transition and must only outweight the dying immune system in order to gain a sure footing. Suddenly, the process of panic and reasoning made much more sense, and in some small way became easier to deal with, although that I will admit that the panic can still seem overwhelming depending on its time of appearance and the mood in which I find myself. All of this activity is happening inside the chrysalis. The atmosphere is one of both dying and decomposition, as well as birth and new life. It's such a conundrum, and yet such a beautiful pattern of growth. The chrysalis itself is a protective environment, yet it came from within the caterpillar as though inherently the creature understood that it must provide for its own transformation and give in to the process in order to grow to its full potential. After more than 5 years in the process of deconstruction, it has only been recently that I started to see more than just the pain and the anger. The changes taking place in me are on my timetable and will not look like someone else's process, nor will it happen at someone else's pace. I'm me and you are you. I'm going to skip through here to the end of this section. So going back to the caterpillar, he's had some time in the chrysalis and has gone through some major changes in form and function. The imaginal cells have done their job, and the new creature waits to burst into the world. If you've ever studied or read about frequency, we can legitimately say that the caterpillar now vibrates to a new frequency, and as such is defined in an entirely different manner. It is almost the moment we've all been waiting for. The butterfly is formed. The metamorphosis is complete. All that remains is the big reveal. The chrysalis has become transparent and now showcases the new creature. I love this idea of transparency, especially after a time of being hidden away. But this is where I like to think and imagine the process along the lines of a poem or a fairy tale. I imagine not a pecking away at the chrysalis like a baby bird chips away at a shell, but rather that the emerging creature takes a large, new, fulfilling breath, and the expansion of the self can no longer be contained within the protective shell. It is time to emerge. I envision the brand new creature crawling slowly from its enclosure, only to turn and reverently hold the chrysalis of its metamorphosis like a new mother cradles the face of a newborn baby. If I were to communicate its thoughts to the chrysalis, they would be something close to reverence and awe at its ability to hold space for the new creation, allowing a safe and perfect transformation. Finally, I would imagine the interaction to include thankfulness for the process, even the pain and the feelings of dying, because it took all of these parts of the process to produce the new creature that will lift its wings and fly where it has never been before. That's that.
And the crowd goes wild. And thank you so much, Michelle. That is coming out with Choir Publishing for sure before 2021.
I hope.
Yes. Yes.
We'll see.
And what is your one tip, your practical tip for other creatives out there who are wanting to have a more efficient creative process?
Well, one of the first things I would say is write from your experience. I found that to be incredibly helpful. And this is the first time I'm writing in a book form, so that was very daunting to me. So in the vein of the very structured, I used an outline, and the outline was incredibly helpful. I started with a very broad outline and ended up having to expand it to very specific so that it was much easier to write my sections. So that was very helpful as well.
Awesome. And people can stay connected with Michelle through, a Facebook commenter. Someone affirmed you and said, beautiful.
Thank you.
Let's see. I wonder who that was. Let's check.
Can't see it.
Karen Levy. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you.
So glad you're with us. So Michelle will put links in the comment thread below to stay connected to her. Keep getting her rich content on her podcast, Bookish, and in her upcoming book. And we're now going to bring, hoping that Be Live will play nice and stop giving us technical difficulties, we're going to let Michelle go back to the green room, have a granola bar. Bye, Michelle. But remember, please ask Michelle any questions in the comments of this video. Okay, Tim is next. We're welcoming Tim out to the stage. Hello, Tim. Okay.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can't hear anybody else at the moment, but you can hear me okay?
Yes. Perfect. We're going to go ahead and let Tim read his piece. I will introduce him, and with his technical difficulties, thank you for your patience. Okay, so Tim, his introduction. My upcoming book is to be called The Greatest Sermon Ever Preached. And his blog and his YouTube channel, which I encourage you to check out, is the Alternative Ulsterman. So that's on YouTube and his blog. He seeks to serve anyone and everyone who follows Jesus or wishes to follow Jesus. And his aim is to help them understand more about what following Jesus means. So we're so glad that Tim is here today. Put any questions for Tim in the comments of this video, and we'll get to those. And remember, after he reads his piece, a little preview of this upcoming book, he's going to give one tip over how to simplify your creative process. So without further ado, I give you Tim Higgins.
Really bad. Yeah, hold on. Yeah, I think I'm live, but I can't hear anything. Right, I've had a blog for a number of years called The Alternative Ulsterman, and I've been writing that for some time. I then started vlogging recently on YouTube, channel of the same name, and my writing has been trying to get back to what Jesus taught, to get rid of all the 2,000 years church history and find something which is simple. And my book is called The Greatest Sermon Ever Preached. It'll be out on Kindle soon, hopefully. I'm waiting for a forward from someone. It's basically an exposition of the Sermon on the Mount and my thoughts on that. And I decided to read this here today from the book because it sort of fits in with what we're looking at, being creative and finding our own space for those of us who are creative. We all know the passage that Jesus spoke when he said, "Enter through the narrow gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the road that leads to destruction, and many enter through it. But small is the gate and narrow the road that leads to life, and only a few find it." And so often what we're told is our church is on the narrow road. We have the truth. We're preaching the truth. Everybody else is on the broad road to destruction. But when you analyse it, we all know that relationship with Jesus is a personal thing. We all come to him as individuals. And that to me is important. And reading this for the book, again, these thoughts came to me. And what I said was, here, if we want to examine what worldliness is about, we should repeat this lesson from Paul, probably my favourite single verse. "Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you'll be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing and perfect will." Romans 12:2. He calls to each of us as individuals to break free from the groupthink and be free to hear his own spirit and voice within ourselves. Thus, I came to see the narrow gate as the one that I alone walked through to find Jesus. I am sure that your gate was different to mine, though maybe similar in some ways, since all gates have a basic construction. I imagine each would have a different lock, different materials, colour, height, weight. Some are easier to open than others. Some have been rusted and bound and need freeing. There was a forest I used to walk through near where I lived. The gravel path ran around it in the prescribed way. But I once noticed a little clearing between the trees where a dark track was apparent. I decided to follow it, for the peace of the seclusion of the trees. I found a small clearing where there was a fallen trunk to sit on and meditate. Nobody else came that way, ever. And then I quote Robert Frost, "Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less travelled by." And that has made all the difference. If you can see the gate as your own, then you are one of those who has opened the gate, gone through, and embarked upon this way. Along this narrow path, we will all accompany each other, rest together, rest alone, take our own pace, meet up again. What a journey it has been, and will still be. Follow your heart, for if Christ is truly residing there, it will resonate with his voice. And so is looking to be creative and be constructive at this time. I would just encourage everyone to be finding themselves in Christ, because each of us knows Jesus in our own personal way. And my hint for creativity would be this, and I'm going to show it to you. Okay. In my study, I have this here, my microphone. My camera is there as well. So about a year ago, I decided to change or to add to my blogging by going onto YouTube and doing vlogging. And it's been such a journey for me in my creative process because it's different. It's a new media, a new way of approaching what I do. And writing has its own way of explaining what's on your mind. But vlogging is different. And speaking to a crowd openly in public is different to vlogging, because in vlogging, it's a YouTube video. People want a certain thing from that. And sometimes it's going to be too long, and sometimes you can speak too fast. And these things I'm learning. I'm learning presentation, I'm learning. And what I'm saying to people is, if you want to be creative, try and find a different media or a different platform. I've even written poetry in the past. So there's all different ways of communicating the message you want to communicate, whether by writing, by blogging, by vlogging, by books. They're all different. and they all have their own audience and they all have their own expectations. So about a year ago, I started vlogging, and it's just changed things for me, and it's made me more aware of the different avenues that I can go down, and that's about it, I think, at the moment. Yeah.
Woo-hoo!
I can see you applauding me, but there's no sound in my end.
I could probably clap like this since
Thank
you
you.
can't hear it. So thank you so much, Tim. And if you have any questions for Tim, tag him in the comments below this video and we'll bring him back up to answer those. And he will also put the links to his YouTube channel, his blog, and his upcoming book in the comments below, so you can keep getting his good content into your life. Okay, Tim, goodbye. Enjoy the green room. We're now going to bring up our third author. I'm going to bring up Melody J. Cole. Hello, Melody. Welcome.
Hello. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Perfect. It is my privilege to introduce Melody now. Melody says, my book is titled Sentiments of a Survivor, and I will be reading a modified excerpt from day 29. What now? My book, audience, my audience consists of those who have or have had cancer and those that care about them. Cancer and death are difficult to talk about, and my book gives some insight into how to have the conversation in a way that makes it less intimidating. And remember, after Melody reads this great excerpt, she's going to give a practical tip to you how to enhance your creative process. So stick around. And if you have any questions for Melody as she's reading, tag her in the comments below. I sound like a broken record. You probably all know now to ask questions in the comments. Okay, I will now I'll give the stage to Melody.
Thank you. And I just want to say how much fun this has been. I've loved everything I've heard so far, and I'm lucky to be grouped with these fine authors. So I thought I would read this excerpt from my book. This was a part of my book that I wrote. It's after treatment, after everything's done, my chemo, my radiation, and there's an interesting time that happens after that because you have a routine that's happening while you're in treatment, and then when it's all over, it's kind of a state of confusion that I didn't expect. So here it goes. Day 29. What now? Another definition I had of the word survivor before having cancer was someone who bought a survivor shirt and ran a marathon, or had another big accomplishment in his or her life after cancer. I'm still waiting for mine. I think the only marathon I'm running is to and from doctor's appointments. I have many that regularly occur at least twice a year. I was extremely excited when I finished treatment and decided it was time to move on with life without cancer. I had an interview in Hutchinson, Kansas, the second to last week of radiation. 3 months later, I was offered and accepted the job. I thought this was a way to have a fresh start. I moved to Junction City, Kansas after I was diagnosed with cancer to be closer to family and friends. Living there made so much sense at a time in life when nothing else did. However, I felt as though I had to move after treatment, not just for the job, but for this new life in order to get back to the way life was before cancer. I was wrong. It was nice to have a fresh start, and as it turned out, I would need a new place to call home in the next few years, but life did not go the way I expected after I moved. 3 months after throwing myself into the job, I realized I was no longer taking good care of myself and paying the consequences. The supervisors at my job were not happy with my performance. Truthfully, neither was I. In that job, I felt as though I was running on a human hamster wheel. You know, those big wheels that you can get into and literally walk in endless circles without going anywhere. Dad pulled my wheelchair into one of those once when I was a little girl. I didn't like it then, and I certainly didn't like being in a job that felt that way. I had worked way too hard to get to where I was to feel as though I could never accomplish anything. So I left the position. I have not yet found the balance of working outside the home and taking care of myself, because that is a full-time job. I've had to take a few years to work solely at the job of taking care of myself. I wrote the first draft of this book during a long season of having to limit time up in my wheelchair. It took 1 month to write. Thankfully, that season is over, and I'm enjoying being more involved with church activities and more time on my hobbies. I am now a deacon at church and enjoy helping with our ministry at the local soup kitchen. I am still looking for something major to accomplish. Maybe this book is that accomplishment. Maybe life itself is it. Life as I know it now has forced me to be a lot less self-success driven and a lot more people-oriented. Maybe surviving cancer for the first time is it. Maybe finding out who I really am and who God intended for me to be is it. Life after cancer is different for everyone. I pray that if you are going through it right now, you get to discern what it means for you. Lord, thank you that there can be life after cancer. Please help us to discern who we are in that life. I pray for the loved ones of those who never get to find out. Amen. And I would say a tip to cultivating productivity or being creative. This came fairly easy to me in this book because I kept a journal during treatment. So in essence, I just turned that journal into a book, and when you read the book, you'll find out more about that. But the problem I had was actually getting to a point where I could finish and go towards publishing. And last year on July 2nd of 2019, I finally said, okay, it's time. I want to be done with this. I set a goal and set myself a deadline because I do well with deadlines. So I'm hoping to publish by July 2nd of this year, and to learn why that is an important date to me, you'll have to read the book. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Woohoo! Yay! Wow, I am just sitting in awe right now about how beautiful and healing and timely the 3 messages we've heard today have been for for Easter Sunday and also for this time of quarantine. I love how you said that maybe the accomplishment is life itself and taking time to know who God made you to be.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And to stay in the know of Melody's upcoming book, Sentiments of a Survivor, she will put the book's website links in the comments. And you had one of the viewers, Melody, Rudy says, Melody, as a cancer survivor, I can relate.
That's nice.
Yeah, and Rudy also says, thank you, Melody, with an exclamation point.
That's very helpful. Thank you, Rudy. Yes, I don't know when it'll be published yet, so I don't have the link to Amazon, but I will. I have a book email, you might say, that is sentimentsofasurvivor@gmail.com.
Okay.
And you can write me there with any questions. And once I have the link and know when I'll be published, I will put that in the signature line of my emails. And I also have a personal Facebook page where I'll say something about it then.
Perfect. And are you welcome to people following you?
Yes, absolutely.
On Facebook? Awesome. And that's a good reminder for all of our friends watching this to go ahead and friend or follow the 4 authors on Facebook, or I know some of them are on Instagram as well. Follow them so you know when these books hit the shelves. And Melody, thank you again for sharing, and we will let you go backstage now.
Okay, thank you.
And now we are welcoming up Sir Todd Vick. Welcome. I'm going to unmute you. Welcome, Todd.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. And Todd will be our last author today to share. It is truly bittersweet. While he is sharing, if you have any questions or comments, please keep those coming. I know Karen Leedy commented on Melody's reading. Yes, exclamation point. I don't know why I feel I need to verbalize the punctuation mark, but I did. Yes, life is a wonderful accomplishment. I agree, Karen. So keep those comments and questions coming for any of the authors. Tag them, and we will let them come back. Oh, that sounded like a dictator. I will let them come back. We will invite them back up to the cyber stage to answer any questions you have. It is now my honor and privilege to introduce Todd. Okay. The authors and I are talking on Instant Messenger, so pardon all the dings. Okay, once again, my joy to introduce Todd Vick. He says, I am an ex-Southern Baptist Church pastor turned author, and I write for those who are broken and their faith in God no longer works for them. People act and react based on the information they have. So I try to give them new and better information so that they can have a better life and have better faith outcomes. So without further ado, I will give the microphone to Todd Vick. Enjoy.
Thank you so much, Meg. And excuse me, and I can't believe that I have to follow all 3 of those wonderful writers and authors, and was just very moved by each one of them. But I'm going to read an excerpt. I'm going to read an excerpt from my book, The Renewing of Your Mind. I wrote this book. It is a book about deconstruction, but I don't use the word deconstruction. A lot of people want to deconstruct, but they don't believe that they can. A lot of folks are sitting in churches not right now, but generally speaking, thinking, I just can't align myself with this teaching teaching and this kind of stuff anymore. Get out. And so
Okay, Todd,
new
I apologize. The sound is breaking
was
up a
written
little bit. Can
those
you
like us.
leave the chat, then come
For
back?
a long time, I wanted to leave the ministry, but I was afraid what would happen if I did. So I wrote this book for us. Hopefully, it will give you some new information, some things to think about, to help you begin your deconstruction process, and obviously want to be there to help any way that I can. I'll share my information here at the end, but I'm going to read a chapter called "The Ugly Prodigal" from the Renewing of Your Mind. If I can get my thing to work. Oh man. I apologize. Here we go. In 1843, Danish author Hans Christian Andersen wrote his popular childhood fairy tale, The Ugly Duckling. I remember reading this story as a child and being fascinated with the ugly duckling. As I mentioned earlier, as a child, I felt like an ugly duckling. I seemed to be a magnet for verbal and physical abuse by my peers, and I'm sure many of you can relate to that feeling. We have talked about it in this book, how thoughts become feelings and feelings become beliefs. And so with that in mind, what do you think the ugly duckling believed about himself? Perhaps he believed that he was a pair of brown shoes in a black and white only tuxedo world. Maybe he began to see himself the way others saw him, ugly. What do you think he felt deep down? What's wrong with me? I'm so worthless. I'm such a failure. I don't measure up to the other ducks. And this type of wrong thinking leads to depression, feelings of worthlessness, a sense of failure, feelings of rejection, and always trying to perform like the other ducks. Imagine the ugly duckling on a job interview. So, Mr. Duckling, is it? What are your strengths? Well, I stand out from the crowd. I'm pretty ugly. Sorry. What are you really good at? Well, I make people laugh at me. Why should we hire you for this job? Well, you shouldn't. And as a pastor, I counseled many people of all ages, and I saw many ugly ducklings sitting across my desk. I didn't think there were ugly ducklings at all. They did. And one person that I counseled was so self-ashamed that she wouldn't even talk during our counseling sessions. She just sat there, unable to even look up at me. I would then attend local pastor meetings where I would just sit quietly and listen to these men brag on their churches. I felt I had nothing to contribute. I was such a dandy minister, I couldn't even get people to talk to me in counseling. And my church was planning to build a new sanctuary, or my church wasn't planning to build a new sanctuary to accommodate the increase in numbers. If we had filled an entire pew in my church, that would have been a huge victory. Ugly duckling, you're up to anyone. Ugly ducklings believe nobody cares if they are at pastors' meetings or not. Ugly ducklings stand before their congregations, choking back tears because they are not as good as the other pastors. Yeah, I was ugly duckling. Ugly ducklings believe that they don't deserve happiness, love, or even money. They settle for less because they don't feel deserving of more. Uglies hesitate to pray because they believe that they are unworthy of God's blessing. So why bother him at all? They see God as a mean stepfather who only wants to catch them screwing up so he can rub their faces in it. Ugly ducklings are of their own thoughts, feelings, and beliefs. They believe the best days of their life have already come and gone. Ugly ducklings feel isolated, lonely, and they are secluded. Ugly ducklings commit suicide to the tune of over 30,000 per year. They self-harm, cutting, burning, or hitting their heads at a rate of over 2 million per year. Ugly ducklings abuse drugs and alcohol so they don't have to deal with the burden of their self-loathing. They hide in plain sight from the world so as not to draw unwanted attention to their alternate lifestyles. Ugly ducklings are drawn to anyone who will accept and affirm them. Sadly, they seldom find someone who will. Thankfully, the story doesn't end there. After the long winter months, the ugly duckling became what he already was, a beautiful swan, the loveliest of the species. He also found his flock. They accepted him, they affirmed him, and they even invited him to fly with them. All the negative self-talk really like came out of, I think, it's the story about a group of high school seniors who were rejected by every college that they applied to. To appease their disappointed parents, they created a fake college of their own and forged a letter of acceptance. They even created a fake website and inadvertently added a button which said, acceptance is one click away. And clicking the button instructed the prospective student when to show up for orientation at the fake facility that they had leased. Without warning, hundreds of rejected students had clicked the button and appeared at the fictional college to the surprise of the friends. The leader of the group, Bartleby, played by actor Justin Long, was urged by his friends to tell the group the truth.
All right. Thank you so much, Todd, for sharing and for your patience with the technical difficulties. There was a little bit of a lag, but we were able to get all of your great content. And where can people go to get a hold of this great book, Renewing of the Mind? Okay. Did that go through?
Like that. But so it's not boring, because it's important to understand how our brain works. God gave, and unfortunately, a lot of people don't realize the power that is in the mind. Be transformed. How? By the renewing of your mind. So the way to think better thoughts, learn to believe better and more effective things. Who were trapped in a religion and a tradition that they do, will help people to understand that they're not alone, and help them find their way from that freedom from feeling trapped. Mind, free their thinking and their believing and their marvelous grace of God, which is really shown to us this day on Easter Sunday, as death could not hold him, and he arose from that and sealed our death here. Thank you so much. Oh, and one thing that I use in my creative process, one of probably the only things in the world that stimulates both sides of the brain, the creative and the classical music or opera. It really gets my.
Oh, wonderful. That is really, really helpful, this idea of setting us up for creative success with music. That's wonderful. Well, I will let Todd I'll invite Todd to put any links where people can stay connected with him and the rich work he is doing in the comment thread. So please look through the comments to find how you can stay connected with all of these authors. Thank you so much, Todd. I'm going to let you go backstage. There you go. Perfection. Are there any other questions or comments for any of our authors? Please comment now for any of them. Let's see, for those that came on a little later, you might have missed Michelle Collins at the start, reading an excerpt from her upcoming book with choir, Metamorphosis. Is the title of that excerpt. The book is going to have a great name soon. And so Michelle, I'll bring Michelle. Can I bring you back up on stage? Perfect. I'm going to bring Michelle back. So you might have missed Michelle. Here she is. And if you got here a little late, you might have also missed Tim. You can't hear me. I'm going to bring you up, Tim. You might have missed Tim Higgins. There's Tim. So go back and rewatch the beginning of this to catch their excerpts from their great books. And tag any of them if you have any questions. I'll let you guys go backstage now because it's so much fun. And I'd encourage everyone to come back here if you. Oh, Todd Vick just commented, everything you need is on my website. Okay, make sure those websites are all in the comment threads for people. And if you really like today's content, which I'm sure you did, if you like today's content and you're thinking, I'm a spiritually attuned go-getter, I want more tips in my life, more tools to cultivate peace, patience, and productivity, then you're definitely going to want to come back here Tuesday night at 7 Central Standard Time, and I'll tell you why. Wait for it. Wait for it. Come back here Tuesday night, this coming Tuesday, the 14th, 7 Central Standard Time. We are having, our guest then will be a licensed counselor, marriage and family therapist, and she'll be giving us tips about how to maintain peace as a couple in the during quarantine. I hope you can see her flyer. I'll put that in the comments as well. So come back then Tuesday night, 7 Central Standard Time to join us for that. How for practical tips as a couple to maintain peace during the quarantine. And I think that is everything. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Perfect. Did I forget? Is there to say anything, authors? Is there anything you want to add before we sign off? Bring you back up. Okay, Melody, you're coming up.
Oh, just wanted to say Happy Easter.
Happy Easter. We'll end on that note. I'm going to bring as many people as I can to wave goodbye.